I'm here at Kuressaare. Kuressaare is a city on an island called Saaremaa, and it's part of Estonia. It's the most western part of Estonia. I thought it was a good time to talk about travel photography because that's something that all photographers do, even though they're hobbyists, really professional photographers or enthusiasts or whatever the level of photography is. Most of us do travel photography. But let's start. Hi there, I'm Peter Forsgard, an Olympus visionary from Helsinki, Finland. Before we get into the 6 tips of travel photography, please consider to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell so you get notified when there is a new video online. My channel is all about Olympus gear and about you getting to be a better photographer. But let's start. Well, as I said, travel photography is probably the genre that all photographers do, but we all have different approach to travel photography. For some, it's just recording memories when you travel with family and friends. And for some, it's the time when you can really dedicate to yourself to photography. It's the free time. And that's why we all have different approach to travel photography. And that's why it's also a very, very interesting genre. And of course, there are a lot of different approaches between those two extremes. But let's start, talk about the tips. And the first tip is travel light. That's what I always do. I don't really want to carry a lot of gear when I do my photography on travels because, of course, when I do photography work, then I have to carry a lot of gear, so I don't want to do that on my leisure time when I do travel photography. And of course, if you're flying, that's usually almost a must. But that's why I also have mirrorless Olympus cameras, because I can get a full gear inside an airplane if I need to. What I usually carry around is only one body and a 12 to 40 millimeter f2.8 zoom lens. Sometimes I might have a prime. And if I have a prime, like right now I do, is the 25 millimeter f1.2 or the 17 millimeter f1.8. Those are my favorite travel lenses when I'm traveling light. Okay, this time I was able to take a bit more stuff. And of course, when I'm doing these videos, I need the video gear also with me. But otherwise, as I said, I travel usually very light with only one body. And also, yeah, remember to have spare batteries and spare memory cards. I know that some photographers have a fresh memory card for every day for their trip. So if they, in a week trip, they have 7 memory cards and they use only 1 memory card a day. Even if the first memory card doesn't come full for the second day, they take the second memory card anyway, and the third on the third day, and so on and so on. And that's a really good way, because and then you can leave the used memory cards to the safety box in your hotel room to be safe. So if something happens to your gear, you won't lose the images you already taken. And I think that's a pretty good tip for pro travelers. And tip number 2, make plans. We often make plans before we make our trip. We check out the sites, we check out the places to visit, we check out the restaurants, etc. So why not make plans for photography also? But we often travel with friends and family, and of course then you might not have a full possibility to make a schedule for your photography as you would like to have. But remember, no photograph is so important. You never regret missing a shot as much you will regret if you didn't spend time with your family. So always remember that. But remember, even though if you're traveling with your friends and family and have not the full possibility to plan your trip and when to go where, it's always possible to check beforehand how the sun is shining and what direction it comes from, and then try to make the schedule so that you go in that order of the places. That way you have the optimal direction of the sun if you want to make some great images. And always remember, waking up early or staying up late will get you better shots because of the quality of sunlight. But what I do before trips, I always check out from 2 apps, Light Track and Photo Pills, the direction of the sun, so I can have a rough idea which way the sun is rising and which way the sun sets, so that I have a better possibility to plan my shots. And remember, if you're at the right time at the right place, you will get better shots. On this trip I had my drone with me, and we all went to Saare Lighthouse in the morning. The light was great and the clouds were really nice. It was also not so windy. So it was a perfect weather to make those drone images of the Saare Lighthouse. And tip number 3, use GPS. Recording the GPS data to your images or the metadata on your files, it will make a lot easier you to find the images in the future, and also it's a lot easier to remember where each photo was taken. And that's something that I use all the time, because otherwise I would not remember where all those images were taken that I've taken during my trips. Some cameras like the M1X has a GPS chip inside the camera, but most cameras don't have. And there is good things and bad things about that, because the GPS chip usually eats up the battery a bit faster than without the GPS. And then there's a second thing, that most camera manufacturers have an app that you can use to track your GPS coordinates for your images. Olympus OE Track app is one of those apps for Olympus cameras. As I said, other manufacturers have different apps for that. Usually the GPS chip on the cameras are on the Pro versions of the cameras. I think the camera manufacturers should have the GPS chip also on consumer cameras, because those are used a lot in travel photography. So that's why I think a chip in a consumer camera would be a great add-on to any consumer level camera. And the fourth tip, be careful. Remember always to be careful when you walk around in an unknown city, or you go to a city with maybe a bit bad neighborhood, or you're in the woods, or you're in the nature and want to take an image of a nice cliff. Don't go too close to the cliff and fall down, and have a bag that does not scream expensive camera gear. That's also part of the planning part, that know the city or the area so that you don't get into trouble, because I don't think any photograph is worth big risks. Of course, if you're a professional and you have to get an image, then it's a different thing, but you're on your own if you screw up. And remember to have your equipment insured. If something bad happens, you can get the money back and get some new gear. Making images of strangers on the street is really nice, but I advise you to ask a permission if you want to take a picture of a stranger on the street. That's always wise, because candid shots, yes, can be done, but it can also get you in trouble if you take a picture of someone that does not want his or her picture taken. So be careful with that. And remember, when you ask the permission, the worst thing that can happen, they can say no. And that's it. No big harm. Tip number 5, look around and observe. Don't be the photographer that takes tons of images and does not experience anything. Concentrate on seeing and experiencing. It's a lot better to have few masterpieces than tons of really crappy images. And before we get into the last tip, I remind you there will be an extra tip in the end. As always. You're probably really excited about the images that you took during your trip, but remember, you do not have to share every image or show every image to everybody. The best way is to pick out the best ones and show only those pictures. And that's something that you really have to learn. You have to be able to kill your darlings. And by that I mean that an image that means a lot to me might not have the same message to others. If it does not have any photographic photographic achievements, or it's not photographically interesting. Maybe the image is not interesting at all to other people. It might be interesting to you, but remember that's something you have to learn. And that applies to every image, not only travel photography. And of course, the selection of images can be a lot bigger if you show it to the ones that were on a trip with you, or your family. You want to share the whole trip. But remember what I just said about the meaning of a photograph for you versus a meaning of a photograph to others. And remember, don't flood your social media accounts either with tons of images, only the masterpieces. And the extra tip, if you only travel with one lens, check out if your camera has a digital zoom. Yes, you heard me right, digital zoom. Let me explain. I know a digital zoom is not the best option for a longer lens, but sometimes it can be very handy and it can help you make the image. Most likely the image quality won't be the best, but still, it's worth the try and test. In most Olympus cameras you can find a digital zoom. I personally have not used it at all actually before I tried it. And I tried it because I was giving a lecture in a Finnish Nature Photographers Association. There was one guy who was using Olympus cameras, and he showed me a few photographs that he had taken with using the digital zoom, and I was surprised of the quality. To access it quickly, I have set it up so that I can access it really quickly with the FN2 button, and it really works nicely. So in this way, you press the FN2, you actually have another focal length for your prime lens, and then when you press it again you have your native angle of view for your prime lens. And I think it works really nicely, and it's a good addition. But as I said, the image quality will be a bit less, and here you can see the difference taken with the M1 Mark II and a 25mm lens, or actually the lens was 12 to 40mm set at 25, but as you can see it can get you a bit closer. I think it's a very handy feature. And you might want to watch these two videos next. But hey, thanks for watching and bye for now.